But right now, we're now going to turn to all of the legal news happening today stateside. So a lawsuit was filed in federal court seeking to stop UFC Freedom 250, the huge UFC event to be held right on the White House lawn. The suit, filed on June 6th by the liberal group Public Integrity Project, alleges that the decisions made by the Department of Interior and the National Park Service permitting the event actually violated federal law and the Park Service's own regulations. So, to discuss this and a whole lot more, we're now going to bring in criminal defense attorney Eric Schwartzreich and former federal prosecutor Doug Burns. Gentlemen, so nice to have you both on this morning. Doug, let me start with you here. So this suit claims that violations include permitting a private sporting event over on public property, so not seeking congressional authorization to build the event stadium, as well as failing allegedly to conduct an environmental review before undertaking, quote, major federal action significantly affecting the quality of the human environment. Okay. Is there anything on earth liberals won't sue Trump for at this point, Doug?
Yeah, they kind of throw in the kitchen sink, right? No, I mean, look, as you said, you know, they raised some procedural stuff, not a proper environmental review. You didn't. Here's the standard one. You didn't get congressional approval, the old separation of powers stuff that you always have. But, you know, it's interesting because the practical part of this outweighs the legal, and the practical part is, will a judge in Washington, where they've taken all kinds of, you know, anti-Trump measures in the courts, will he enjoin the event? That'll be interesting to see. I'd be anxious to hear what my colleague thinks about that.
Yeah, Eric, if you would love, I would love for you to weigh in on this as well.
Getting into the mix, having a UFC fight right here. I mean, I do agree. I mean, are we going, is this politics? It shouldn't be a red or a blue issue. I mean, this is a red, white, and blue issue. There are people, obviously, that are not happy for this non-traditional event, this UFC fight being on the grounds there. And will a judge, in particular a liberal judge in D.C., enjoin it? I think you might expect to see that happen.
Yeah, well, we are certainly going to see about this. Doug, we have to pivot to one of the cases really gripping the nation right now, the Carmelo Anthony murder case. The prosecution, they arrested Saturday, and defense is expected to start calling witnesses this week, maybe as early as today. This case, you know, it is getting, you know, some comparisons to the O.J. Simpson case. Again, people are believing that race is a factor here. Of course, Austin Metcalf, the man that was allegedly murdered, was white. Carmelo Anthony is black. On top of that, you know, it's being recorded that the jury is all white. Is that a factor in this as well when it comes to whether or not Carmelo Anthony will be convicted? Again, a lot of the witnesses, if you look into this case, they came out, a lot of them under the age of 18, come out and said, nope. Carmelo Anthony, he was really the one looking for a fight that day. That's what it seems. He was the aggressor. What are you making of this case so far, Doug?
Well, the victim's father, interestingly, said it's not a racial case, it's not a political case, it's a human being case. And I agree, actually. On the X's and O's legally, in a justification or self-defense case, the judge is going to instruct the jury, ladies and gentlemen, the defendant can only use force that is commensurate with the force that was presented to him. So to introduce a knife into a high school dust-up under a tent is way out of proportion, and that's why I've been saying all along from the beginning of covering this case that self-defense is a very high hurdle, and I do not think they're going to be successful, the defense, with it, because the force was just way too out of proportion.
Yeah, Eric, I would love for you to weigh on this. Do you agree with that? Again, you know, from the witnesses, what we are hearing, it was Austin Metcalf's twin brother had asked Carmelo Anthony, please leave. Most people asked, it's seemingly semi-calmly to leave, and then he ends up stabbing Metcalf with a knife, allegedly. Again, how are you seeing this case so far, and how do you think this is going to end?
Well, the force does need to be proportionate, and as trial lawyers, where we win or lose cases is in jury selection. And race plays into all cases, whether you have a black defendant, whether you have a white defendant. What it really comes down to is perspective of the jurors. You know, and I wasn't there for jury selection, but what are their feelings on self-defense? What do they know about certain states, or have they heard about stand your ground laws? But when it comes to the self-defense law, what they're going to be instructed, the danger doesn't have to be actually real. It is what the perception is. Are they going to be able, the defense, make this dog hunt in a case like this? I do agree with my colleague here that under this case, it is a difficult sell, but it's going to depend upon how well they picked that jury, what questions they were asked, what they know about that jury, and how they fleshed that jury out.
I feel like the defense has got an uphill battle here. It's going to be very interesting to see what they present this week. We'll be watching closely. Eric Schwartzreich and Doug Burns, gentlemen, really appreciate you coming on this morning. Fantastic insight.